Good evening, everybody. It's very lovely to be here. We first began this work many years ago, and our first research trial was funded by Rotary. So I start off saying this has been something that Rotary has embraced as a focus on helping parents and people caring for young people and children to talk and respond to kids' emotions. And so that's what I'm going to talk to you about this evening. I'm going to talk to you in particular about the program that Anne and also my co-author Christiana Kehoe and I have developed, which is the Tuning into Teens program. And I'm going to tell you, I'm not going to focus a lot on research. I'm going to talk mostly about what this program is about. Now, for those of you young people in the audience, it's really interesting to hear what you think about these ideas. So please come and tell me afterwards if you have some feedback on things. What I want you all to think about today, whether you're a parent of a teenager or a child, whether you're a carer, an auntie or an uncle, a grandparent, a friend, these are the things I'm going to talk to you about today are ways of connecting with any person where there's emotions involved. So what I'm talking to you about, you go, oh, this sounds right in my relationship with my partner or with my friends. It's not just a parenting or caregiving skill I'm talking about. It's a way of connecting with people when emotions occur. So hopefully from this evening, I'll give you a bit of a sense of that, of what this means about how you can have conversations with young people or anyone coming to you or around you or you're connecting with, where there is anger, there is sadness, there's distress, there's worries, there's guilt, there's shame, there's lots of different emotions that might be happening for people in their lives because this is normal. This is part of what we all face at different times. So I'm going to talk to you a bit about how to connect, how to have these conversations, how to talk about emotions with people in your lives and maybe young people in your lives as well. I'm going to hopefully be able to do a clicky thing. Yes, this is just a little bit what I'm going to talk about. I'm going to tell you a little bit first about adolescent emotional development and then go into how, in particular, our focus is on building what we call emotional intelligence. And then talk to you a bit about how a way of interacting with kids, young people, where you talk about emotions actually builds up these emotional intelligence skills and give you some idea of what that looks like. And so Leah, who's in the audience, is going to join me this evening and we're going to demonstrate it live, unscripted, in action. We'll see how it goes. So thanks, Leah. And I'm going to give you also a bit of hopefully give you all some ways of thinking a bit about how when people are emotional around us, how do we also manage our own emotional reactions in interactions, whether it be with teens, a partner, our siblings, our mums, dads, our grandchildren. So that's what we want you to think a bit about your own reactions to, and I'll finish up with some take-home points. I also, I guess I'm going to give you some examples. None of my examples will be examples that you'd recognise anyone. They're altered enough to be different. And I'm going to try not to talk too much about my two teens as well in my life, because I always get a censorship of what can I talk about, what can't I? And mostly it's you can't, so don't talk about it. So I'm in the midst of parenting adolescents and it's a daily, it's fantastic. And I must say one of the things I never expected was how wonderful it is to go through adolescence again alongside young people and how different it is as well to my own experience of adolescence growing up in Christchurch, New Zealand. So the differences are sort of often quite huge in the generations when we come to then respond to our own young people around emotional experiences. So first off, I'm going to just show you a little video about adolescent emotional development. And this is just a 5-minute video that Trevor's going to jump in and play for us so that we can have a bit of a sense of what's going on in adolescence, what's happening, what are the changes that are going on that we're focusing on here. So see how we go.
The ability to understand and manage emotions improves across adolescence. But puberty can create many emotional challenges. Some adolescents seem to slide seamlessly through this period. However, for many, anxiety seems to grow and grow. We often see increased irritability and anger, especially towards parents and other family members, or times when they appear completely emotionless and hard to reach, until something happens that they feel strongly about. Research has shown that a number of changes occur that explain the tiredness and the increase in emotions. There is enormous physical growth. The heart doubles in size. A change in sleep patterns. Is worsened by lower levels of the feel-good chemicals dopamine and serotonin, which can make adolescents feel low, unmotivated, and easily irritated. The brain begins to change itself, becoming more tailored and efficient. This begins with changes in the emotion center of the brain. Emotions are experienced more intensely compared with children and adults, while parts of the brain that we need to help us manage those emotions are still developing and are not finished growing until the mid to late 20s. Adolescents often hold in or ignore emotions, leaving them more vulnerable to erupt when the emotional pressure becomes too much. Even a small amount of stress can quickly overwhelm adolescents. The many physical and emotional changes can come with intense feelings of shame and embarrassment, which are so hard to express, and instead burst out as anger or withdrawal. Their daily life is full of different emotions. There is much uncertainty and anxiety, sadness and grief, frustration and anger. But there is also excitement about the things that they enjoy, like connecting with friends or anticipating new experiences. While adolescents can think faster than before, critically evaluate everything, and master more complex issues, they are also still developing these skills. Mostly, they live in the moment and will rely on their emotional rather than their rational brain to make decisions, especially when they are with their peers. This makes them wonderfully spontaneous, but also likely to get into some tricky situations at times. The reward center of their brain is larger and more sensitive during this time. They love things that are new, sweet, or risky, desire connection and praise, overvalue rewards, and minimize long-term outcomes or the consequences of their actions. Device use can tick all of those boxes, and adolescents can quickly feel energized and excited. But they often keep using their device when they should stop, and can react strongly when it is withdrawn. Many times they need food or connection to help them back to the real world. There is a renewed push for independence and autonomy as peers become more important and they work out who they are and what they want to be. Even though it may not seem so, being connected with parents remains incredibly important to help guide their needs and desires in safe ways. When we understand the normal changes that happen during this time and the impact on emotion experience, it can help us not to take things so personally and shift us to have more compassion, patience, and kindness, so we can be a guiding presence across this transition.
Anything familiar there for you? Sleep. Oh my goodness. Melatonin in my household is just a nightmare. Young people often want to talk at night time because that's when they come alive. That's when they're ready to connect. And I often find it's 10:30 at night and the door to the living room, hi. And then my daughter wants to talk. And the mornings are terrible. So it's so hard to get up and moving in those mornings. And there's so much change that's happening because of these brain changes, because that huge growth in the brain, all these new wirings are happening in the brain, all this new emotion. And, you know, what it does mean is there are lots of changes. Obviously, the huge physical change in food intake is a big one, or not, like not wanting to eat. So both things. So much about trying to work out at this time of life, who am I? And it's really interesting when you're in the earlier stage of adolescence, the questions aren't like, do I fit in? And I want to be just like everyone else. And I remember being really curious about the sort of 11, 12, 13-year-olds where every kid in a group, 11, 12, 13-year-olds is wearing the same white trainers, the same jeans, the same jacket, exactly the same outfit. And you see them walking around in groups looking identical. Belonging is really important, fitting in. But you come out a little later in adolescence and it's actually, I don't want to be just the same as everyone else. I've got my difference. I am my own self, my own unique person. So there's quite a big transition right through as we're growing there. So I think also that idea of, fitting in is a huge issue around connecting and having social relationships and who you belong to, who you belong with. Do I have friends? Who am I in terms of my identity? Am I same-sex attracted? Am I, who am I attracted to? What is my gender, my identity around my gender? Where do I fit in my culture and in my community? Do I fit? Where do I fit? So that process is so important, and that creates so many different emotions. And for us as people guiding or parenting, it's actually really challenging often when it's a very different generation and different topics, being talked about that you might feel out of your depth to talk about as a carer or parent. I think also that, there's much more emotion where you feel embarrassed about the way you look. I don't know if you guys remember, I remember very acutely the spots I'd have, which would be like 1 spot, 2 spot, and they were so huge, pimples on my face, that everyone was looking at them and I couldn't go to school. And it would be overwhelming, that whole thing about people are looking at me, and I'm feeling very vulnerable about that. And often as parents or adults, we forget how acutely painful it can be to be looked at or viewed by others, especially when you are trying to work out who am I and what am I like, and who likes me, who do I like in the world. So there's a much more of feelings of sort of embarrassment and shame and uncertainty about what you are and who you look like. So a lot of conversations that might need to happen, but at the same time, when you're an adolescent, you no longer want to talk to your parents anymore about a lot of these things. And so that can be very hard and really hard to help as a parent. So also being a young person too, there's all that pressure of who am I going to be? What am I going to do with my life? Those constant questions and that constant need to do schoolwork and do, your tests and fit, do well or whatever it is, or not feeling that you fit in, not being able to do the schoolwork, not being able to do the things that you're being asked to do. And that can be really challenging for many young people. And we've obviously seen COVID where many young people got to be at home online, and for many that's been perfect, is been able to kind of almost be away from the watching eyes of everyone, and then becomes incredibly difficult to go back out into the world. And that brings up so many feelings of like, I don't feel I can do this, and I want to stay at home. I want to retreat. I want to retreat behind my phone. I want to retreat into myself or away. And so that's a huge issue that's leading to lots of anxiety for many, many young people and adults too. sometimes. Many of you might have found you felt very comfortable schooled and at home, working away there or being away from the world. And it was actually really hard to come back out into the world after COVID. And so this sort of highlights it's often an even bigger experience for young people where the emotions are so full and strong. Also, I think that you get so much flooding of intense emotion when you're at this age and overwhelmed by the feelings. They're so huge, they're so big, because you've got all of these, flashes of emotion and you don't have the skills to manage. How can I stop myself saying that, especially to my family or people around me? And so the most common thing is either lots of expressive big emotions or completely shutting down. And that's a really common thing. And because it's often hard when you're going through all these changes and all these emotional experiences to be able to share and express these things and to know how to put words to them at all. I think also there's a lot of irritability. It's just part of this stage of life. You feel much more of that irritable reactiveness, especially with your family. And it's often conflicts happening constantly, both in not doing my schoolwork or, my reaction to having to do the dishes or even just, trying to get you stop using that vape all the time, whatever it might be, that's leading to lots of conflict and lots of big emotions there. And I think so these are big emotional times for young people. And one of the things that we are trying to really foster in kids developing and young people developing is the ability to start recognizing what these feelings are that you're having. And in adolescence, there's a really big change with making much more connection with, I'm actually feeling really worried about this test and I can't go to school. I don't feel like I can go to school. What do I need to do to manage this? Can I talk to someone, call my friend or text and let them know that where I'm at? They say, you can do it. Come on, I'll just meet you at the gate. And there's more of a process of, learning to actually identify how I feel and then what I can do to manage how I feel. So big changes that are happening are being able to identify your emotions and emotions of other people as well. So I see my friend and she looks really quiet today. Why is she so quiet? What's going on? Oh, I know her parents are fighting a lot right now and I think they're separating. Maybe that's why she just yelled at me as we were getting on the bus there. So starting to identify and notice other people's emotions. And adolescence is a time when you become really aware of this. So there's so much going on to notice other young people's emotions and how they manage them. But that often means you're also becoming more critical of each other and also more critical of your own reactions, which can also feed into feeling like I'm not doing a good job here. But this is the part about learning to understand and identify emotions and manage sometimes that you express your emotions and sometimes you don't express your emotions. And that's a big learning happening especially through adolescence. Happens less at home. Often lots of, emotions come out at home or at school or outside of the home. Everything's very shut in and kept in. So that's a lot of what's happening for many young people. And you are starting to be aware of what you can do. When I'm feeling really sad, I can actually go and have a cuddle with my mum. Or when I'm really sad, I know I've just got to get out and kick the footy for a while. Or when I'm angry, I'm going to yell at my friend. I've actually just got to walk away right now. So learning that different things help you at those times. And these are all the changes that are happening in learning about emotions, which we call emotional intelligence skills. So this is what we're hoping for kids to really develop. And one of the ways this develops is partly, some people are just calmer people in life. They just sort of don't tend to get very emotional. And others are very emotional, have lots of big emotions. And often adolescence is when that all comes to, right out. But it does mean that when you're parenting and guiding kids, you have to do a lot more work with kids, especially who have lots of intense emotions, because they might need more help. And funnily enough, though, I remember thinking when I started working with young people many years ago that peers, friends were the most important influence. And in fact, we know that still it's parents and people caring for young people. They are still have the most influence over young people's development. even though it feels like they don't want to know you when you're a parent of a young person who's pushing away a lot at that time. So it depends also a lot, not just on your temperament, but also what experiences you're having as to how your emotional intelligence develops as well. And we know that in particular, as a parent or carer, the way you express your emotions. So I'm a fiery person, and I look at my kids sometimes and go, oh my God, just the same as me. You know, both fire up heaps, copy me, watch me. And I think, oh, of course they're going to do that if I do it. We model and they copy. And that's a big part of, you know, how we learn. We watch others, and that's how we learn a lot of our skills from our parents or people raising us. It also depends though, if as parents or carers, if we react and tell a kid, don't be so silly, that's ridiculous the way you're reacting, you're more likely to shut that down and not express that feeling, or to think, oh, that's not a good feeling to have. So we also know that part of what we're trying to do is actually wanting to help people to react less critically or less harshly to kids when they're having emotions, so that they actually do start to learn a bit more about what's going on. At the same time, we also know the way you guide and teach young people about how to express and manage emotions is also very important. And these are some of the main ways we can influence a young person's emotional intelligence. It also depends on the culture you're in, the what's happening around you, COVID, school, if you're traveling lots, if you're having big things happen, if you're having very traumatic things happen, if you're involved in places where there's bushfires, or, you know, things are just really bad at home and traumatic and difficult things happening at home. Those experiences all feed into your emotional development, and whether you shut off from your emotions or react big with emotions depends a lot on what's going on in the family environment. Also know though that the way, as parents, the way you feel about your emotions yourself. So how I feel about expressing sadness, or having and being angry, or being proud and showing pride. We all have attitudes to emotions, and they affect what we do when a young person is emotional, or what we do with a partner or a friend when they're emotional. So our feelings about having emotions affect how we respond to other people. And this is a very important part that comes from our family backgrounds ourselves. If you've grown up with, you know, don't you dare show that anger, or don't be such a wuss, you know, you're just being sad, you know, don't cry around here, you've got to grow up. Those sort of messages, if you've had those sort of messages in your life, it makes it much harder to notice that feeling of sadness and to feel comfortable with that sadness when something really difficult happens with your friends or in your life. So this is big because all of us have had challenges and ups and downs and difficult things that have happened in our lives as we've grown up when it comes to emotions. And it still has an effect on how we respond to people around us, our kids, our friends, our partners, our people in our community. So in our work on the, just if I can make that slide go on to the next one, Trevor. My battery might have gone flat. So Trevor, can you move us on to the next slide? Thank you. My clicker stopped clicking. Managing my emotions in the moment in front of a whole lot of people. This is strategy, or this breathe. So the thing about, we know that the researchers tells us that there are different patterns or ways of responding to emotions that have come from our family background that influence the way we respond to emotions. And these different patterns are we, as a parent, might be more disapproving of emotions, like, you know, don't be so silly, that's ridiculous, or how dare you get angry with me, or, you know, don't be such a, you know, don't be so big, full of yourself, you know, be a bit humble. It's horrible to be so proud of yourself. So that more disapproving response tends to shut down as much the development of good emotional intelligence. It's harder to feel okay about emotions if you're really shut off. And when you're raised with that more disapproving response, it's harder. Or being more emotionally dismissing, like, you'll be okay, darling, there's nothing to worry about, it's just a test, it's just a little thing, or, you have a go later, you'll be fine. If you're always trying to problem solve for a kid when they're emotional and tell them what to do, dismissing the feeling, we know that makes it harder for a kid to listen to that feeling is happening for me. I do feel irritated and upset. So try again. I'll give you my clicker. So I don't know if I missed one there. I might have missed one there. So jumping ahead to later. So dismissing or disapproving of emotions, or also it's not great for kids to have what we call a more laissez-faire approach. It's okay to express all your emotions, but there's no limits around your behavior, because kids actually need good limits. It's not okay for you to yell at me in public. That's not okay. And we need to talk about that. I'm going to talk to you about that later when we're not in front of everyone. Okay, right. Because in front of people is not good for talking about emotions. So laissez-faire ways of just allowing kids to be and to express emotions freely without any kind of guidance is also not that helpful. Ideally, what we want to do, and the work we've drawn is from John Gottman, Lynn Fainsever-Katz and Carolyn Hooven, who did this lovely longitudinal study that found some parents were more what we call emotion coaching, these points up here. And emotion coaching is when a kid is, or actually any person, because these are not just parenting skills, these are actually relationship skills. When someone is emotional, you notice, hey, you seem a bit shut down there. I'm just noticing that. And I know especially that the best time to actually to even put words or talk is actually probably not when you're in a full, intense emotional moment. It's when it's a bit smaller. And then you might see that as a time to come toward and connect. Because one of the most important things about emotions is connection. They help to connect, to feel safe and secure. And when we're emotional, we actually don't want to be always by ourselves. Sometimes we do, but often we actually still want to be nearby. And when you're growing up, you often feel a bit overwhelmed by feelings. And so being connected is actually important. So that's the second step we talk about, that to connect with a young person or connect with a person who's emotional. The third part is to listen with empathy. See, that looks really hard. I'd hate that too, to be left out. Or, oh, really again? Oh, how annoying. You might put words to and label the feeling. So that's the fourth step, helping put words to it. Asking what are you feeling is actually quite hard to answer. So when you're responding to someone who's emotional, you're better to say, I wonder if you're just really worried, or, oh, that's awful, that sounds really hard. So empathy or naming feelings. And those parts often mean then when you've done that, you often don't just stop. You often then just might be quite quiet as the emotion moves and shifts, because you don't always want to then be told or asked, well, what are you going to do about it? What could you do to make it better? Even though that is what we talk about as the fifth step of emotion coaching, it's often not what we want to do straight away to try and solve or fix. We often want to give time for a young person to actually move through the feeling until the emotion gets less intense. So that is often where you might just be sitting nearby. And many young people don't want too much connection. And in fact, one of the things that we know is that when you've got younger kids, you can often work through these 5 steps of emotion coaching, work through them. But when you get to adolescence, one of the things that really changes, and there's a chap by the name of Michael Riera, it's on the reading list that you had. Michael Riera says that when our kids are younger, we can manage them. We can manage their lives. We can get them to do stuff, dramatic. We can get them to do stuff. We can also help them work through emotions a bit more quickly. But one of the things that happens in adolescence is you pretty much fire your parent as your manager. And if you can still keep connecting, still stay connected, that young person may re-engage or rehire you as a consultant. And it's a really important thing to think about. There's, that change that happens as young people, as kids move into adolescence, stop controlling me and having to do everything in my life or even manage my emotions. I don't want you to do that anymore. Stop. I'm not talking to you. And if we're too intrusive and keep on trying to do that, you get shut right out. The door closes, bang, shut. But the idea is to try and use something like these steps where you just might empathize a little bit, and you might allow them to come back to talk to you when they are ready. So that means that if the moment is high intensity emotion, it might not be the time to talk. Lower intensity emotions, often after big outbursts, are often the time to talk. So these are the 5 steps of emotion coaching. And one of the things I also want you to think about is that our brain is often flooded by emotions. And when our brain is full and flooded by emotions, Dan Siegel talks about some really nice ideas and uses the hand as a model of the brain to explain this. But basically, when we're calm, our thinking and our feeling part of our brain, our feeling part runs between our ears and our thinking part is here. The connection between those parts of our brain mean that we can tell how we're feeling. But when we get really angry or when we get really overwhelmed with distress or worry, we essentially flip our lid. And that means we no longer can think clearly about how we feel. You know, like when you have a fight with your partner or your friend or your mum or your sister or brother, and you just can't think straight. You can only yell out your perspective and you can't hear them. It's because we're flooded by emotions at those times. Now, when you're going through adolescence, especially, you tend to be flooded by emotions. You flip your lid very easily. So when you're parenting, when you're guiding and connecting with young people when they're emotional, you can't have conversations that really involve many words when the lid is flipped. The better thing to do is actually just to connect. It might be just a hand on the back. It might be just sitting down, having a glass of water, having a cup of tea. Should we just go for a walk? Let's get in the car, go for a drive. Let's go out bush. Whatever it is that allows you to connect, but it's not involving words often. And especially for young people, it's often about still connecting when there's emotion and allowing that emotion to come down, for the lid to come back down. And that's when we're more likely to have the words to be able to think clearly, more clearly. And that's when you can actually go through a bit more of those 5 steps of emotion coaching. Okay, so we're now going to do a little demonstration. Do you want to come up to the stage, please, Leah? And have we got any handheld mics? There are, there's one there. I have one more. Is there 2? Oh, can you tell me if they're both on the TV? Now, we are just going to testing. Let's just go out to the side. Is it okay to be on this side of the stage? Is that okay, Lisa? Okay, stay. Okay, come over here. We'll do it standing. That's okay. Right. So we are just going to do a bit of a role play here. I'm going to be mum, and Leah is daughter. You be daughter. Yep, sounds good. Okay. Now I'm just going to. What we're going to do is we're going to demonstrate the difference between being more emotionally dismissive and being more emotion coaching. Okay. We're going to run the scene 2 times. The first time being emotionally dismissive, and then we'll completely stop and we'll change. Okay. So, hi, sweetie. How are you going?
All right.
Yeah.
How are you?
Good.
How was your day?
Yeah, it was good. Yeah. I was plenty busy, you know, stuff. What's up?
Nothing. Just something happened at school, but it's okay.
Something happened?
Yeah.
What happened?
One of my mates, we had an argument, and now she's just not talking to me at all. But I just feel so left alone. I just don't know what to do.
She'll get over it, sweet. You just got to leave it be.
Yeah, but I just feel so terrible. Like I'm just being left alone.
But you know, you're tough. You don't get affected by those sort of things. You just got to ignore her when she does things like you can't reward that sort of stuff. Otherwise, she's always going to be treating you that way.
I just feel like you're not listening to me at all.
Sweetheart, I'm just trying to give you advice. You came to talk to me about it.
It's like you don't even care. You're not even listening to me.
I care. Look, come on. I've got to deal with problems all day at work. I don't want to have to come home and just get yelled at by you. Come on.
So you don't even care about how I feel.
course I care about hate. Otherwise, I wouldn't be having this conversation with you.
Are you joking? You know, you're probably going to go tell all of your friends about this, and then I'm going to look like such a terrible person.
I won't tell them, okay? I promise.
That's what you always say, and then you always go and do it. I'm so done. Just leave me alone.
Is this familiar? Anybody? Yeah. This time we're going to try again, and this time I'm going to try and use those emotion coaching steps. Trevor, can you put up the 5 emotion coaching steps? It's just back up a little bit, and then just in case people want to see that. But I'm not going to talk to them. I'm just going to, back 1 or 2 more, I think it is. Next one down. Yeah, thanks. Okay. So we're going to try it again. Okay. Hey, darling, how are you?
I'm good. How are you? How's your day?
It's busy. Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
What's up?
Just something happened at school, but it's okay.
Oh, really?
Yeah, my mate, we had an argument, and now she's just completely ignoring me. And I just feel so alone.
Oh, God, really?
Yeah, it's just so annoying. It just always happens all the time. And I just like, all my friends, they either turn against us, and it's just this big thing out of nothing, and it's so annoying.
So it becomes like a really big thing. And it feels like it was not even sure what it was.
Yeah, and then we just get over it the next day, and I feel like it's just so confusing.
Yeah, right. Yeah. Like you don't know what's going on with her, and
yeah, and then we just always fight, but then we just act like nothing happened, and I don't even know.
It's an awful feeling. It's like being swept under the carpet, and you don't know what really is there.
Yeah, and
yeah, gosh, it can make you feel really worried too when you're like, what was there?
Yeah, and then I don't even want to go to school anymore because it's just so many things, and it's just too much.
Hard enough doing school, isn't it?
Yeah.
Without having things like this go on.
Yeah.
I'm sorry to hear that, sweetheart.
Thanks. It's okay. I'll be fine.
You'd like to be fine, hey?
Yeah. I'm sure we'll probably just talk about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe I'll just message her.
Yeah. You reckon you can do that?
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you feel okay about reaching out to her?
Yeah, I think we need to talk about it because it happens all the time.
Yeah. It's really hurt, isn't it, this time?
Yeah.
But maybe multiple times it hurts.
Yeah.
And in front of other people too, it's a bit embarrassing.
Yeah. It's just all the time. And then I feel like just everyone is always just watching us.
Yeah. Yeah. So you get a bit self-conscious.
Yeah.
Well, maybe should we have some bit of food, and then when you maybe had a bit of time, maybe you want to give her a message or something?
Yeah.
Yeah. Sounds good.
Yeah. Thanks.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. You there? So, can I ask you first, can you just talk a bit about what it felt like in each scenario for you?
In the first scenario, I just really felt like I was being shut down, as if I wasn't being heard, and as if she wasn't thinking about my feelings, just trying to sit down on the couch, watch TV instead of push me away, because she's so tired. And then in the second one, really showing that she was caring and just being actually interested in it, and not just trying to solve the problem and act like it was nothing, but more really going in touch with my emotions and how I feel and relating to it. So then I open up more and I'm less like inside.
It's less inside.
Yes.
And what did you feel inside in the second scenario?
I felt a lot lighter, a lot better, and a lot more open. And it made me feel more comfortable. And so I would tell you more, and I'd be more open and less restricted and hidden about things in my life.
Yeah. We didn't talk lots about solutions. You came up with a sort of, like a texture or something like that. How did it feel about that feelings toward her that you were having?
In the first scene, I felt angry, and it just hardened my anger for her. However, in the second one, it sort of made me feel a lot more calmer and have more control over what I'm saying instead of letting my emotions take control into what I'm messaging, and making sure that it's a more calm response and something that I actually want, not just something that I think I want in the moment.
Right, which might be the to actually let out the anger, which is often also part of it too, isn't it? To feel angry and hurt by your friend. So it does have that element.
Yeah.
Yeah, but often underneath the anger is a deeper feeling, isn't
Yeah,
it?
a deeper feeling, and something that when you want to be messaging someone what you actually want to say, but it's all covered up by anger, and then it can make the situation worse.
Yeah, it's a great point. So you might have actually texted her quite differently in either situation.
Yeah.
Great. Okay, thank you. Can I just check, does anyone have any questions in the audience? Yep.
Thank you. In the first one, it felt like almost a little bit of a tennis match, back and forth, back and forth. In the second one, I felt like you spoke a lot less and you spoke a lot more. Did you feel that? And do you feel that was like empowering for you to sort of, I guess, control your own emotions and also come up with your own solutions, because you weren't being talked at? There was a lot of open space in the conversation that you filled.
It felt a lot more like open, as if it wasn't like a tennis match back and forth. And it really made me feel like I could sort of think about what I was saying before I was saying it, and truly like say what I want to say instead of just saying whatever's at the top of my head and getting angry.
Right. Okay. It really didn't. The first one was a real ping pong, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And it's interesting because I got into the anger. I was just like, all that shittiness from the day is all coming out in me, and I can take it out on you. Oh. Which sometimes actually can feel good in the moment, can't it? Like you say, it's like that surface anger is there, that bubble's there, but
and then it's gone, and then you go into your room and then you feel bad about it.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Thanks, Lee. That was really lovely. Thank you so much. So this is a way of talking that actually opens up conversation. And as you identified, I spoke less. So a part of emotion coaching is actually to stop talking, a big, big part. The other thing is that many young people don't like you to say, how are you feeling? Or I can see you're really, really sad about that, because they're just like, tell me how I'm feeling. It escalates things. Sometimes you want to use language that is more general, like, it's so hard, or oh, that's really sad. So I'm using phrases that are less about your feelings and more about that feels this way more generally. And it's less like I'm controlling how you feel. And that's a really important part of that change. This is your feelings and I don't want to be in control of them. That's really important. It's part of that change from manager to consultant. I'm just walking alongside and sort of exploring something with you rather than trying to get you to go somewhere with those feelings. Great, thank you. That's a nice demonstration. So the important thing here is that when you respond this way, it helps to identify, especially what you describe, the feelings underneath. And we often think about this metaphor of the iceberg, and I missed one of my slides before, which was not popping up, this one, the iceberg. The surface is often withdrawal, irritability, even just anger, or a lot of sort of worry on the surface. We want to be able to explore what are the feelings underneath that iceberg. That's ideally because, just as you say, there was that hurt and worried and embarrassed and maybe feeling not included or something's wrong with you. There's a whole lot of underneath feelings. And that's what we're trying to help people to be able to identify as what's underneath, because that's what drives the anger or drives the shutting down. So that's a big part of what we're trying to do in sort of having this conversation of using emotions, emotion coaching, and really identifying that all those feelings are okay to have. They're really important to have. Okay, I'm going to move on to. So the other thing is that when you learn that these are natural and all feelings actually shift, the important thing when you're alongside someone who's emotional is you actually, if you don't talk so much, you may use touch, if that's okay. It might not be. You might just be close and quite quiet but present. I'm here. You might be doing what we call using the emotion detective, which is imagine a similar situation for, like Leah was going through. If I can imagine a similar situation to me when someone has really gone off at me, and I can think of a time when someone did that to me in my work, and they got really angry and went off at me in front of other people, and feeling humiliated. I felt really sad and really hurt and really like maybe there's something wrong with me. All those feelings I can feel myself. Now, when I'm being an emotion detective, I'm identifying what's a similar situation for me as an adult that I can identify what those feelings are. And when I can do that, I'm more likely to be able to empathize. That feels good. And my reaction is more genuine, because a genuine response is to actually connect with your own emotions and then to communicate that with another person, either through touch, the non-verbal sounds you make, whatever that might be. Okay, and that's a really important part of what we want to be able to do here. And that helps to also that as you walk alongside and you just can feel that alongside someone else, that is part of connection. When we are together and alongside each other going through emotional experiences, is what helps emotions to move and change, and that's very important. Okay, so if you can, try to avoid saying things like calm down or you'll be right, don't worry, get over it. How many times have I told you this? Just breathe. Someone's just telling people what to do with their emotions doesn't help. Instead, trying to know, can I slow down and build in a pause of my own reactions? Can I slow down and breathe a little bit myself rather than going straight into giving advice? I don't want to do that. I want to slow myself right down. And also notice that often a young person will come into the kitchen and say, how's your day? Or they might even just come into the kitchen and grunt or slam the dishwasher. Many young people will give bids for connection when they want to connect. They want to let you know something's going on. So look out for those. It might be, and then what you want to do is say, yeah, sounds like a bit of a rough day, or oh, that's a big sigh, or oh, there's a lot of anger in there in that dishwasher today, hey? Yeah, we have a bit of that dishwasher anger and door slamming in our house. But that whole process of actually just noticing when those bids are for needing to connect, and that's really important. And try to use less talk and ask less questions, and just notice those bids and just put out a message, something like, slow yourself down and try those 5 steps of emotion coaching. And then allow time. That's really important. I'm not going to play that. The other thing is manage your own emotional reactions. Count to 10. Breathing is really good. Or I actually respond. I do this all the time because we've got a hot household of lots of big emotions. And just changing a temperature. The swallow reflex is great for actually, as a reflex, as a part of the brain that helps to regulate and reduce arousal. Those are the sort of things that are really important for us when we're caring for people, is to slow down before you speak, before you react. And also to make sure that when you're parenting or caring for kids, you have to find ways of looking after yourself. You've got to do things to both calm yourself and to let off steam, because we as parents and caregivers get lots of emotion and need times when we need to actually let out that emotion, because otherwise it comes into force in an interaction like with Leah. All that emotion just comes out in that relationship, and often that wasn't what you meant to do. So we have to do things to refuel ourselves and look after ourselves. Okay, so thinking a bit about that is about emotion regulation for parents. Now, we've done lots of research on this approach for teaching emotion coaching to parents of teens, and found that it has really important impacts on young people's emotional intelligence, their behaviour, their social skills, building better connections, reducing conflict in families. And in fact, the Headspace have done a national, they did an evaluation of tuning into teens in Headspace, and found again it was very, very accepted by parents and carers of young people, and very helpful for young people themselves when their parents were coming on and actually talking differently about emotions with them. That was very important. So I just want to finish with a few final points. Think about building in a pause when you are responding to emotions. Noticing that change from manager to consultant, that is a difference. Step back, You don't have to control everything that's going on. Notice when, what are the emotions that might be under the iceberg, and when are the opportunities to connect, and when a young person wants to connect. And it might be that the best times are driving late at night. No eye contact is often better. And try and turn towards a young person rather than turning away or lashing out with comments and statements that you might want to say. That's really important. And emotion coach, as I said, when emotions often lower intensity, talking through when the lid has come down, not when they've flipped the lid. That's really important. And there's a few little statements up there you can think about that are about showing empathy or how to start naming emotions. That's really important. And sometimes you do talk about the last step, what would help. What do you need to do to repair that friendship? What do you need to do to go and apologise? Or is there something you want to do with your sister? Is there something you need to say to the teacher? What are you going to do about the homework? Sometimes we have to help young people to solve problems. But if you do that before you've addressed the emotions, and the emotions have come down in intensity, it's not going to work. It tends to be rejected and it doesn't work. So that's really important. So if you are setting limits, always think about delivering that too with empathy. I know this is really hard, not being able to go to the party with your friends. It is hard when we have limits and we get kids to do difficult things. You can communicate that ideally with more empathy, and it's more likely that a young person will stop reacting so strongly with you. But it might be they do, and you have to come back and connect again with them later to talk through something. Thank you very much. There's a little bit just to acknowledge my co-authors, Anne and Christiane, and my team at the Tuning Into Kids team, and for also some of the materials I've used tonight. Thank you very much for having me along, and it's lovely to be able to present to you all now.